Tonight, the 6th of May, I want to start the meeting with something that I've been thinking about, and it's connected to something that LaRouche has said in the past in a number of different ways. Now, I'm not sure if my rendition of this is the same as LaRouche's. I'm not sure, but this is how I've begun to think about it, and it's about the idea of placement. Okay, where in the imagination do you place yourself in? First of all, if you are trying to sing a song, where do you place your voice? If you're trying to give a speech, where do you place your voice? Where in the imagination do you as a human being place yourself, place your mind, place your voice? Because that's the quality of your voice is going to reflect the quality of your mind, or whether you can connect it to it. And so it's a question of placement. And it connects to your voice connects with your speaking apparatus. And if you're not placing it in your imagination, in your mind, in the right way, then you're not going to be speaking very well. Okay, or your speech will not have a quality of truth to it. Will not have a quality of sincerity. Okay, now in a chorus where you have a number of voices singing a musical piece with a conductor, how do you conceptualize outside of yourself while you're singing the piece in a way that allows you to fit your voice in properly with the other voices? How does that? How do you arrive at that? That's not an easy thing to do, but that's how you arrive at that. So what's going on in your mind is that you're not thinking of yourself. You're not thinking about other things. You're thinking about how to put your voice in a relationship with other voices such that something is created that otherwise wouldn't be created. Now, let's go to the level of a conversation. Okay, we have a conversation of two people, right, which is a more private conversation. And then you go to 3 and 4, it's more group conversation. Well, what is the issue? What kind of conversation is it? Are the participants in the conversation seeking to arrive at a concept that is not quite being formulated by one of the speakers or by several of the other speakers, or by several other people, or the other person that you're talking to? Or are you just going to say, well, I went to the beach, and I went to this, and I went to that, and oh yeah, and oh, by the way, that reminds me of I went there and I went here and what happened. That kind of conversation is not structured on placing yourself in a position of trying to understand where it must go to complete a concept, to complete an idea. That kind of conversation is often is the kind of conversation people will have in these days. And when you try to have a conversation that actually goes to a concept, something happens and they go this way or that way, or they change the topic, or something.
Attention deficit.
Attention is broken. So what's going on? Because what's going on? You're requesting that they participate in placing themselves in the imagination, in where this thing must go in order for it to be completed, in order for a completion or whatever. Okay. Now there may be a disagreement in that conversation, but the conversation, if the people involved in the conversation are trying to figure out where the disagreement is and how to resolve the disagreement, then they have to do the same thing. They have to place themselves in the imagination into where that other person is trying to go with the conversation. What is the underlying concept that underlies what they're saying? And then you then can say, well, I think your underlying concept has some issues, and here's why. And then they're listening to you, and they say, well, yeah, I see. Yeah, so that's the kind of conversation where both of the people, if it's two, if it's three or four, they have their minds placed in the imagination of what is being attempted to be said. Okay? Now, in the crudest sense, this is what we mean by Platonic discussion. Although that's not exactly what Plato, but I'm using that term loosely. So, and in this is the issue of truthfulness. Because what's the issue of truthfulness? The issue of truthfulness is you're seeking to find out, or you're seeking to arrive at a concept that you don't have fully developed, or the other person doesn't have fully developed. So this is a, and then you're examining the concept. And the reason it's an essence of truthfulness is because there is no ulterior motive. There is no intention to seduce, to convince, to connive, you know, and none of that. It has a quality of truthfulness. And when people are actually engaged in that kind of conversation, time ceases, their mind is focused, and they're trying to arrive at something. Now, and I believe, and I could be wrong, I believe that this is the only way you can have you can access truthfulness. You can have a truthful conversation, even if you disagree. And a conversation that is naturally approaching truthfulness has this quality of course. It has a similar quality of trying to figure it out. And where different voices in the conversation are filling out what is missing in the other person's discourse. So now I'm going to jump to a higher level. The idea of placement is also the core concept of citizenship and the core conception of a nation or a republic. The government of a nation or a republic is the course. And the most of all, the placement of the individuals in the course of discussion defines a citizen. Okay? And that is the government and that is the citizen. The government is not necessarily how much money you have and who you can influence. Although that can be part of a dysfunctional government. The government is not necessarily who's been elected and so forth. The government is precisely this displacement of individuals in a dialogue, which has the commitment to the good and has the commitment to the good of the republic, and is sincere. And to the degree that that dialogue goes on is the degree to which a republic has the potential of coming up with ideas and policies that would further ensure the survival of that republic. Now, if the individuals are driven by lust for power, greed, anger, fear, ego, ambition, they will not be able to properly place themselves in the imagination to be able to conduct that kind of discussion. There's a certain quality of, maybe they can come up with some ideas and what have you, but they're not placed for that kind of discussion. And when the discussion begins to impinge upon these qualities, an anger might be triggered by what you said, or the ego might be offended, whatever, then you can't continue the discussion. Now, what I call the British Empire, in a certain sense, is a systemic and intricate system of disrupting the ability of the individual to place themselves in the imagination in this choral sense. That's their job. That's what they do. Everything they do is based on that. And this is essential to stop the dialogue, to stop the discussion. It's not that they fear you. They fear the dialogue. They fear the discussion. They fear that in that discussion, ideas will emerge in people's minds that can be acted upon, that are centered on the general welfare, that are centered on the good. And that is what they fear. That is what they fear. And so the media, which is completely controlled, is entirely organized through entertainment, through the debates, through the discussion of ideas, of politics. It's designed to disrupt the ability of people to place themselves in that in a sense. Or they will say, what do you mean by this? Does this mean that? Or does this mean this? No, it doesn't mean that, and it doesn't mean this, it means something else. Well, we're not going to let you go there. It either has to mean this or it has to mean that. How many people have been through that? I go through it every day. How many people go through that say, well, are you trying to say this? No, I'm not trying to say that. Well, then I don't understand what you're saying. No, what I'm saying is not in that this or that. It's outside of this or that. Well, no. We're not doing that. And you know, or are you left or right? Are you a capitalist or a communist? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everything is done from the standpoint of getting people stuck where they can't place themselves outside of everything in the imagination, where they can actually discuss in this manner, by placing themselves in this manner. You know, you have all these categories of identities, and that disrupts the ability to have that level of philosophical discussion or policy discussion or any kind of discussion. So basically everything is reduced to, you know, I went to the store and this happened to me. Oh no, I went to the other store and this happened to me. You know, or you know, or something that we discovered the other day. You go into you're homeless. You go into a shelter, and everybody's doing drugs, right? And you go to the person running the shelter, and they say, well, why aren't you doing something about it? Because, well, they have their life, they have their, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, there's this quality of insidiousness of there is no rigor. There is no rigor.
Sorry.
Now, so at the core of the dialogue is an implicit sense of what's good, without preconditions. It's not a category of good. We're arriving at the best concept, at the best idea, or something that is a concept. Now, if we go from there to the level of nations with the concept of placement with respect to the leading strata of nations, now it becomes very serious. Because what is the dialogue that's going on between nations, between the leaders of nations? What is the dialogue that's actually going on within the leadership of the nation? Now we know that in Canada, the real dialogue is going on in the Privy Council of 380 members, and they're not supposed to reveal what it is they're discussing. So obviously that's where they can talk about anything they want to talk about, but we don't know what it is that they're talking about. We don't even know if they have a dialogue. You know, but
British Privy Council?
The Canadian Privy Council.
380 members?
Roughly 380 living members. I counted it. I had to count it. I had to count it all. They didn't give me a figure. They just listed all the living members, and I had to count. Count it. Okay. So within and without nation, it is that dialogue which makes policy. So if the dialogue is, you know, is of a certain type, then the dialogue will like, if the dialogue is, okay, you know, we can't let the Chinese or the Russians get ahead of us, then, or the get ahead of us, then that's the dialogue, right? Okay, so now, and this is what makes policy. And it depends on where the leadership place themselves in their imagination of where things must go, rightly or wrongly. Now, placement in both the unfolding of policies with and between nations, but also placement within the entire scope of history, both what came before and what must be as a part of a unified dialogue within a course of universal history. That's a conception and imagination that essentially is raised by Schiller in his plays, where he shows, and Shakespeare too, where he shows that the conception of the rulers was not one that could foresee or could project or imagine what consequences would be of what they were doing. Now, different voices appear to contradict, but properly placed individuals can overcome these apparent contradictions because they are placed in what is good, what is necessary, what unifies at a higher level the contradiction. And now I'm getting to the actual crux of what I'm trying to get at, is that this is the issue of Donald Trump as president. Where is his placement? Where does he place himself? Okay, now, if you approach the situation of me versus you, or from geopolitics, or from social Darwinism, or from empire, there is no dialogue in that sense. There is haggling, there is ultimatums, there is force, there's persuasion, there's negotiations to gain a maximum advantage for whatever the parties are that are involved. And if you're the loser in that, that's your problem. That mentality is not placed in terms of where humanity must go, because ultimately that you'll destroy the nation, you'll destroy its civilization. Well, that's not an issue. The consequences of what we do is not an issue. We're just fulfilling our individual impulses, our oligarchical impulses, our nation for itself impulses, or imperial impulses. But this is also, in a sense, true for the universe as a whole. And I'm probably going to step on some toes here, and the biosphere, and also the increase of man's mastery over the universe. It is the placement of the individual in that process of where must humanity go, where must humanity in history go. And so what I'm going to say something very outrageous. So what I think distinguishes from what I've been able to see of Putin and Xi Jinping is that they appear to me to have placed themselves in the imagination, similar to what Helga LaRouche and LaRouche have placed themselves in the imagination, in terms of where things must go in the history of humanity for the good of humanity, because otherwise everything's going to be destroyed. And that's something that I think is true. I may be wrong, but I think that's true. And the issue facing them is, can these two, with the help of all other forces that have some sense of this, including ourselves, who have a sense of this, bring the new U.S. president into that conversation? In other words, if you bring him into that conversation and he becomes part of that conversation, and that is where he places himself because of these other individuals, then the potential exists for a different outcome than the extinction of the human race, because that's where we are otherwise headed. And so that's where I come up with this issue of placement. So now the individual, the power of the individual, the power of the solitary individual in society does not lie in money per se, or strength, or physical strength, or even how bright you are, or how intelligent you are, or even necessarily how educated you are. It lies in the power of the person's placement themselves in the imagination for what is good, and in the conversation with others. that is coherent. And such a person is not pessimistic. Pessimism and naive optimism, which ultimately becomes pessimism, occurs only because of the lack of placement. If you are placed in history, and you are placed in society, from the standpoint of where it has to go, and through the dialogue of where it has to go, then you can't be bullied. You cannot be scared. You cannot be made into a little thing. You are in history. You are part of history. You are making history even though no one may know your name. So I'm going to look at this I'm going to look at what's going on from this standpoint a little bit. Now, there's a very interesting article that appeared in a Turkish daily, Yeni Safak, and I'm not familiar with, I'm not pronouncing it, and the chief editor is Ibrahim Karagul. And what he writes in his editorial, he says that all post-World War II alliances, EU, NATO, the transatlantic framework has collapsed. That's what he's saying. The New World Order is being defined by the interaction of the leaders of the United States, Russia, and China. The EU can no longer play a role. Britain, France, and Germany can play a role as Britain, France, and Germany, but they cannot play a role anymore from the standpoint of the European Union. And he also says that there is a failure in this relationship, that humanity faces extinction, because there is in wars, because this is the only way, this is what's emerging. And what you look at right now is a phenomenon occurring, which you can't really define, but it's different. Erdogan meets with Modi of India, and then he meets with Putin in Sochi, now, and then by Sunday, a week from today, he'll be in Beijing meeting with Putin again and Xi Jinping at the One Belt One Road Summit, which I'll go into. And then he's going to be meeting with Trump on the 16th, the day after. Now, I'm not going to say, well, this is what they're going to talk about and this is what it's all about. I'm not going to make any kind of projections. But this is not normal. For the head of Turkey to go here, 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 and then here. It's just like that. Who's he talking to? He's talking to the leadership of India, the leadership of Russia, the leadership of China, and the leadership of the United States. Why does he have to do that? What's going on? What are they discussing? I don't know. But but he's not going to London. He's not going to Paris. He's not. Okay.
He's not welcome there.
Okay. Now, you have Mahmoud Abbas meeting with who? Meeting with Trump. And then a week from now, he was going to be meeting with Putin. What are they talking about? Why is he meeting with Trump, and then why is he meeting with Putin? I don't know.
Why has Lieberman so frantic?
What's going on?
Yeah.
Are they just having social gatherings, you know? Are they just having tea with each other or something like that? No.
Maybe buy some land in Siberia and move Palestine to Siberia.
Yeah, right.
No, there's already a Jewish autonomous region there.
So Trump's going to go to Saudi Arabia to Mecca. He's going to go to Israel to Jerusalem, and he's going to go to Rome to the Vatican.
Oh, really?
He's going to go to the holy places of the three of the major Abrahamic religions.
You can't go to me.
No, he can't go to Mecca.
He can't go to Mecca. Well,
Riyadh.
maybe Riyadh, okay. Maybe he can't go to Mecca. You're right. You're right. Okay. Okay, so,
Only if he says Allahu Akbar.
okay, so now, they just finished this conference in Astana, Kazakhstan, where the United States sent a significant high-level observer who was not a participant, but was there. And they came up with a Russian safe zone program, which is really designed to try to separate the wheat from the chaff so that they can kill the wheat and deal with the chaff later. You know, basically. Yeah, you know, in other words, they want to wipe out the hardcore and then they can deal with the light stuff later. You know, or you guys want to be part of this or not? But they got to take out the hardcore because it's the shaft is oriented. As long as the shaft is oriented to the hardcore, they're not going to. It makes it a lot harder. I can't believe I said that. Anyhow, now you have this crisis of North Korea, and this is a very serious crisis. This could lead to the devastation of South Korea and North Korea, and I watched Tillerson's State Department address, and he said we're 25% of the way there and that they're collaborating with China on everything they're doing. So the Korean situation at this moment, according to these people, is that Trump is talking regularly with Xi Jinping, and what Tillerson also said is that they're not doing the usual thing with China. The conversations are between the people that count, who directly report to Xi Jinping, and to the people who count in the U.S. who directly report to Trump. So they're not doing they're narrowing it down to, that's what he said. And then he said that there's a meeting between him and Mattis and their equivalents in China on security. And there'll be a meeting between the Commerce Secretary of the U.S. and the Treasury Secretary and their equivalent in China. And both of those meetings are going to be in direct contact with the leadership, with the leader. And so they're talking about trade and economic prosperity and security. And what Tillerson said is that our America First policy centers around security and prosperity, economic prosperity. While we hold these values dear of, you know, freedom of the individual and all that other stuff, right? That's not the same as security and economic prosperity. Therefore, we're not going to allow that to essentially determine what we do. So he put it in a very soft way, but that's what he said. So he also said something very interesting. He said, in dealing with Latin America, he said that we have to shut down the drug trade, and that the drug traffic is the principal financier of international terrorism. So he's connecting the drug trade to international terrorism, which nobody's ever done that except ourselves and some other people. So that's one thing. So he did it, and then he basically, in a euphemistic way, said that the way people were thinking about policy was still rooted in an old paradigm, basically, and that people have to take into effect that China has developed and they have 500 million people out of poverty and so on and so forth. We have to readjust everything. So he's
Sorry, specifically to that, it was a Cold War mentality.
yeah, the Cold War mentality, right? Which I would say more is the neocon mentality, but he didn't even say that. And so, the New York Times has called Trump a Chinese agent now.
He's not Manchurian anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, the times are swinging. The times are swinging.
The flying trees.
Yeah. Let Rush off.
Now, So
Finally.
now I wanna mention this conference, which is coming up on Sunday, a week from this Sunday, on the 14th and 15th of May in Beijing. It's the One Belt, One Road Conference. And 110 nations are going to be represented with 1,200 delegates and 28 heads of state, at least. And 60 international organizations. Now, what's happening is awesome. There are 5 major development corridors, not counting the sea routes. And stuff is moving very fast. There's the northern one. There's the one that goes through. There's one that goes through the Middle East. There's one that goes through Pakistan. There's one that goes through India. And these are huge. And they're in the process of being built now. And
Shanghai, Berlin.
right. Already, this is what's going on. The Chinese economic growth rate shocked all of Wall Street and the city of London. It's 6.9%, according to them. According to factory output, it's 7.6%. That's per annum. That's a huge growth rate. The increase in disposable income of the Chinese population is at a rate of 7.5%. The increase in retail spending in the Chinese population, according to the figures, is 10.4%. And based on satellite imaging, they're saying it's more than that. The growth rate is more than 6.9 based on the comparison of satellite images from a year ago and now. Now, goods and trade. They went up 26% overall in the first quarter between China and the Belt and Road countries. Over 3 months, export by China to these countries was up 15.8%, and imports to China up 42.9% from the 60 countries that are in the One Belt, One Road. So you get a sense of this momentum, this building. In Europe, you have the following countries that are very big on getting involved: Greece, Serbia, Hungary, Czech Republic, Italy, Portugal, Belarus, and I'm leaving some, Switzerland. These countries are like, we want to be part of it, we want to be one of the hubs, we want to get involved, this is our future. And this is really, this is undermining the confidence of the European Union on a massive scale. Now, compare that to the situation in the transatlantic region. Okay. Corporate debt since 2008 has gone up from 8 to 14 trillion. A lot of the funds have gone into driving up the stock market and through mergers and acquisitions. And 500 billion to drive up the stock indexes. The non-financial corporate debt relative to operating revenues coming in, or operating revenues, is the highest in history. It's 3.2 to 1. The IMF stability report said that said that debt to income, I don't understand how this works, rose from 37 to 41% in corporations. The default rate of non-financial corporations has gone from 3% to 5% to 5.6% is projected this year. If interest rates in the U.S. were to go up just slightly, 20% of U.S. corporations would go under. There's a complete lack of growth in the U.S. economy, which registered a 1.7% growth, or 0.7% growth, which is, I mean, compare that to what's going on elsewhere. So this is like a tale of two worlds, okay? And the world is not interested in, and so this corporate debt bubble is about to blow, and includes the real estate bubble. A large part of the corporate debt is tied to the real estate bubble. Now, the British response to all of this is quite interesting. I'm having a hard time with this. Theresa May is saying that, you know, they're gonna, you know, that Assad is, or the British are saying that Assad did it,
What did?
the chemical thing, the chemical weapon, and that the Brits are going to engage, after the June elections, they're going to engage in military action in Syria.
Let them try. There is no fight.
And there's a huge discussion that occurred, starting with the issue of Tony Blair, who is in trouble, and there are legal cases involving his lies that led to the war, and that Britain was guilty of being involved in aggressive war. And then the Queen's Counsel came out saying, the Queen's Counsel came out saying that
There goes the belt.
the Queen's Counsel came out saying that they're going to put a brief in favor of Tony Blair, to defend Tony Blair, saying that aggressive war is not a violation of British law. Waging aggressive war is not a violation. And it's not, obviously, because it's monarchy. Now, this thing that's going on with the Trident. Unfortunately, the United Kingdom has these submarines, Trident submarines, and they give Britain a small but potentially independent capability.
Russia has the most submarines, so they have to remember that.
What?
Russia has biggest number of submarines than any.
Right, but we're not worried about how many. We're worried about who has them. I think we have a bigger North Korea in the United Kingdom than we do in North Korea. We have a bigger potential North Korea. That's what I'm saying. Okay, and so Fallon came out saying that Theresa May would use nuclear weapons preemptively in a situation in which there was no immediate threat of nuclear war. No country's ever said that. So I think the British are saying, hey, you guys, keep in mind, you know, we can wage aggressive war, and we can use our nukes, and we don't have to tell you when, and we don't have to tell you why and how. So I don't know what that means. I have no idea why that's coming up now, and why they're saying that. But I suspect there's some terror in the British Empire right now, that the whole system's coming down. Okay.
They need a distraction, a huge distraction.
So now, coming to the elections. Okay. A lot of people are making a big deal about the French elections. Macron versus Le Pen. And the polls, the French polls are generally correct, and they're saying it's 60-40. But there's another issue that they're not talking about, or not talking about a lot, which is that in order for Macron to do what he did, he formed a new party called En Marche, which split the socialists. So you have the Socialist Party over here, you have En Marche, a lot of the socialists joined En Marche, but the party has to, I believe, if I'm correct, has to register 577 candidates in order to be a party in the elections 5 weeks from now, which are for the parliament. So now Le Pen doesn't, the Front National doesn't have, the Le Pens or these other parties, they do I believe, put up 577. They've been doing that, you know, over a period of time. So the question is,
They've got the machinery.
huh?
They've all got the
They got the machinery, but their machinery hasn't been fully set up yet with Macron, with the En Marche, which is totally new. It was created out of nothing. And he is the continuation of Hollande.
No, he's worse, actually.
Huh?
He's worse, I think. than-
Probably worse. He's also
He's
young.
Obama's.
He's an Obama, yeah. Oh, by the way, on that note, Obama is now campaigning for Macron.
He's
He went to Europe to campaign for Macron, which should help Le Pen a little bit. Yeah, he's going there and he's talking about how wonderful he is and how he's the our values, it's our values, right? And
pay off for that 400 grand speaking.
so
Yeah.
the situation with France is not it goes into the 5 weeks later, and then you have to. It's not clear who's going to be the prime minister. It's not clear what the party structure, what the division of deputies are going to be in, and so forth and so on. And that's a big source of the power.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Le Pen said it's going to be a woman, either me or Merkel.
Merkel, yeah. In other words, yeah, you got it. So now we have the South Korean elections on Tuesday, and the South Korean elections that will probably elect this guy Moon. I forgot his other two names, but he is very much opposed to having the THAAD missiles in place, and they just were put in place just prior to the elections by the caretaker government. Park was impeached. So that's going to be very interesting. And he's also for reviving what they call the Sunshine Policy, which is reopening the North Korean facilities that the South Korea set up to employ North Koreans, and the rail. All of that got shut down under the pressure from Obama and some pressure from the previous Bush administration. But that's all part of the equation. Now we come to the Alberta elections, and I mean the BC elections. What am I thinking? I'm thinking Alberta. I'm thinking of Montreal. Now we come to the BC elections. I'm thinking about.
You're getting younger.
Okay, I'm sorry. BC elections. Okay. So this is this Tuesday, and it doesn't look like the NDP is going to come out on top. It doesn't look that way. They don't appear to have a charismatic candidate that can pull out the stops, and it seems that they're running on a contradictory platform, which we all know about, which is green and blue. Blue means jobs and development. Green means no jobs and no development. So there's a problem. There's a problem, identity problem there with the NDP, and it appears that the people that are running it are not aware that there's a problem or don't really care. And
I think they cannot do any much about it. They cannot change it. It's too late to change.
so you know more about them than I do. So anyhow, so it's a very strange situation, but it's not. We're on the edge of nuclear war. We're still on the edge of nuclear war, but there is this process going on of a discussion, increasingly between Trump and Putin, and with Trump and Xi Jinping. And we know that, I believe this is true, that Xi Jinping and Putin are coordinating everything they're doing with Trump. That if Trump talks to Xi Jinping, Putin gets briefed on that conversation, and vice versa. I suspect that's going on. I don't know if that is what's going on, but I suspect that that's the kind of thing that's going on.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
According to some Americans, they say, oh, Xi Jinping agreed with everything, and according to Trump, what we say, they said, why? Because he smiled. A Chinese smile and it doesn't mean anything.
He always smiles.
So that's how they base their you know,
Xi Jinping.
that he agreed because he smiled. He smiled all the time.
Smiling and
I never seen a photo of him not smiling.
Well, the assessment from Helga is,
Yeah.
and the assessment of Henry Kissinger, which are two different people with two different ways of thinking, is that the Chinese leadership has since Mao, has gone up in conceptual power per leader each generation. And the US leadership has gone down.
Nixon.
So, I suspect that Xi Jinping is, based on what I've read about him, and based on his experience, and based upon his writings, that he is a person who has had a lot of trials and tribulations. He's been through a lot. He went through the Cultural Revolution as a teenager, as a young teenager in the field, in the brigades, and through the rural areas of China. So he came up through the rural areas, and yes, his father was in the standing committee, which was later put together by Deng Xiaoping. But this guy, from what I can see, is extremely able to connect with the average person in China. So he has a very strong following in the population. And what he told them when he came in, he says, and this of course, he said, you know, our time to fulfill the Chinese dream has come. So he's talking about the Chinese dream. What's he mean by that? That the emergence of China as a civilization, and there's a massive revival of classical Chinese culture going on right now in China. The most popular TV show is a competition where people have to come up with classical Chinese poetry, and there is this quality, but it's hard for us to know because we're not Chinese. You know, we don't know all the nuances. But my sense is that the Chinese are very serious. The top leadership of China is very capable, very competent, and very serious, and they welcome a change from what they had before, because now there's at least a dialogue. There was no dialogue before this. There was no discussion. There were no discussions. And so the question is, can the Chinese and the Russians convince the American president on the way in which he can make America great again? Literally. I'm saying that. That's what it boils down to. We can help you make America great again. We would love to help you make America great again. Why? Because we don't want to go to nuclear war. We will make you as great as you want to be. but we have to have global development. Now, what is the overall arching worldview of the Obama people, of the British? No, we want to depopulate the planet. We need to bring it down through famine, disease, and whatever it means down to 2 billion. We must have the world back to a condition on the edge of just a little bit of industrialization. That's their vision. I'm serious.
They can control it better.
They can control it better, but they don't ever have to worry about science, progress, technology. The oligarchy can rule forever. It's insane. It's pure insanity. And so they see the One Belt, One Road, and they see Trump having discussions with these people. And what did he say? I mean, it's kind of, he really blew everybody away in the United States when he said, oh, under the right conditions, yeah, I'd be honored to meet with Kim Jong-un.
He's a smart cookie.
Huh?
He's a smart cookie.
He's a smart cookie, right? So what is he saying? He's saying, what is he saying? The whole thing of,
The Chinese have asked him both to cool it,
yeah,
both of them, and so he's trying to do it.
yeah, so he's collaborating with China at this point. But it doesn't mean that we won't end up in a nuclear war. Okay, I know, it's not clear. But we must place ourselves in the position of promoting the problem. The problem we have in the U.S. population and the Canadian population, and to a large degree the European population, is that they're not aware of the One Belt, One Road. They really aren't aware of it. It's not part of their reality. And this is amazing.
Yeah, 120 countries, you say, are gathering?
110. Now, this is also very important. Yesterday, the China Daily, which is the English-speaking publication of the Chinese media, of the Chinese government, ran a very large article discussing on Helga LaRouche's call for Trump to go to the One Belt, One Road. So the Chinese are signaling that there are other forces out there, and they mentioned somebody else as well in the article, but they're mentioning the LaRouche movement as an example of a Western-based group that is promoting these ideas as well. So it's not just Chinese. So it's having, the fact that they did that is very important because the English language Chinese Daily is read. It's about 500,000 circulation. A lot of it in China with English speakers that are in China, and a lot of it outside of China. But they're putting Helga in a very prominent position on this. They have been over the last couple weeks. So this One Belt, One Road thing is very big. And all these nations are going to be there. And they're going to be talking about all of this. And they're going to be looking at all the projects and looking at the discussion of all the projects. And it's not just a question of the deals. It's a question of the mind. It's the mindset. It's the sense of, it's making it real for all these countries. And I don't know who the U.S. is sending, and it would be good if Trump went, but Trump will be most likely meeting in person with Putin in July. So that's only a month and a half away, or a little more than, almost 2 months away. And he's meeting him at the next G20 meeting in July. So this reality, we have to help bring it to the population as best we can, or in whatever way we can.
We've already had his Harrisburg speech where he mentioned China. There's already been a shift. I think it's important to mention that, right? Where, do you know more details about this?
No, I don't know. I missed that one.
Sorry, I thought it was you that had brought it up. Was it you that had mentioned it in Harrisburg?
Yeah, he's spoke of the need for cooperation with China, and he got a warm response from the crowd, which I think was significant.
Okay.
And also, I think during the election, of course, it was anti-China, and our movement in New York, in New Jersey, has intersected a lot of these pro-Trump people. And Diane Sayer, our leader in New Jersey, was asked to speak at a pro-Trump rally about the One Belt, One Road, and about China's role in...
And she had a huge fight with the people.
She did, but we're penetrating so that they have an understanding of what this actually represents. So.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
She was invited to take on the people that couldn't get that concept.
Right.
Organizers were to address that.
There was an Italian delegation from the Lombard region that we're friends with that came to Trump Tower, and we were present at the meeting that they had with an advisor to Trump. And the impression that we got was that the Trump administration is trying to use Italy as a bridge to Russia. They're trying to use the elements in Italy that are against the euro and that are in Italy, because as you know, Italy has a history of working with the Soviet Union and has a history of working with Russia. They're closer to Russia than probably any other major European country. So there's a lot, and of course the Vatican has a lot of relations with Russia, good and bad. And so there's a lot going on there. So there's a lot happening. So it's not clear. We're not, and nothing's consolidated. But there seems to be a process going on which is not under the control of Wall Street, the City of London, and what have you. Now, that brings me to what's happening in the U.S. This corporate debt crisis is causing a real sense of a return to an even bigger crisis than 2008, and we're picking it up. This kind of quality and so there's been a massive attack on Glass-Steagall coming in from the heads of Wells Fargo, from the heads of Bank of America, and Gary Cohn, the head of economic advisors, is saying that Trump intends to implement Glass-Steagall. Now, you know, Obama was saying he was implementing Glass-Steagall, so you know, it's not. You know, it's not that I'm skeptical. It's that I realize that if you implement Glass-Steagall, you wipe out Wall Street and the City of London. You do. You have an incredible power shift at that point. You have an incredible end of a very powerful financier element. They go under. You know what's going on with what they call third stage or third dimension derivatives. These are derivatives that are so bad that they are that they let the bank decide what the market value is, and then what happens is they're being discounted by the European Central Bank. In other words, they're using them to say, okay, so you give them to the European Central Bank, they lend you the money, and they hold that as an asset. And then the Federal Reserve has been doing that too. So one of the ways that Honig, the guy who is now the number two, who used to be head of the Kansas City Fed, and now he's the number two at the Federal Deposit Insurance, or one of those. He said that the way you can deal with this is you can force them to value their speculative derivatives according to their market value. Well, hell, that's the end of them. I mean, it's all over for them. So all of that is going on. All of that is going on. So now the Glass-Steagall situation is really heating up in the United States. And the question is, will the Democrats work with Trump on Glass-Steagall if Trump really wants to do Glass-Steagall?
No.
That's a key issue.
That's who they're supposed to be standing for.
Yeah. But there's been you've had, what's her name, the senator from Jane Harman, the senator from the congresswoman. No, Dianne Feinstein. I'm sorry, Dianne Feinstein has come out saying that she didn't think the Russians were involved in hacking in the elections. So there is this dissension in the Democratic Party. So Trump's getting $65 million for his book, allegedly, his biography. That's
$65
Look
million?
at the books.
Isn't it
the
Obama?
book that somebody's going to write for him. And
Obama, right?
Obama.
You said
You
Trump.
said Trump.
Yeah, right?
You say Trump.
You got four.
I said Trump. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Obama, and he's getting these honorariums for a 1 hour speech, 1.5 hour speech, and people are like going, you know. So and now he's come to Europe to help Macron get elected. But he's still active. But my sense, gut feeling is that the Democrats are now undergoing a crisis, and I think is the Observer a British publication?
Yeah.
Yeah, what they said is that the progressive Democrats, if they don't come out attacking Obama soon, there will be the Democratic Party will cease to exist.